pain is generally the biggest driver that humans have. But if you're like literally at like ground zero, that's you trying to run before you can walk. And what happens when you try to run before you can walk? He's going to fall flat in his face.
Cool. Thanks for joining me today, Chris. It's great to have you here. I always kind of start this way. Do you want to quickly sort of sum up in, if you can, less than 60 seconds, a bit about your journey? Who is Chris Finlay?
60 seconds. Awesome challenge. I love it. I love it. Cool, man. Yeah, thanks for having us, Luke. Look, dude, I'm a business coach, and the path obviously to getting here was a little bit wild, as many coaches experience a lot of the time, right? So typical entrepreneurial kid, right? Selling fake IDs in school when I was friggin' 16, make a little cash on the side. I started a big bar crawl business in the UK when I was 20. Then spent first half of my 20s sort of in the States, working a bunch of different random jobs. I was coaching soccer for a while. I was a bartender in New York City. And then I ultimately ended up in this place where, man, I was a bit miserable, to be frank. You know, I was a bit stressed, tired, overworked. So I kind of embarked on a big around the world mission and went and did a bunch of crazy stuff, from, you know, doing yoga in India with monks in ashrams, and then friggin', you know, China in Kung Fu, also Kung Fu in China with monks as well, and all this kind of crazy stuff, friggin' ayahuasca in the Amazon. And I was kind of on this big mission for a couple of years, but that also got old. I got to the point where, you know, I was lacking doing something with myself, being someone. And I'd always kind of had this yearning to coach, to lead, right? To share, to help people. Right. That's always the kind of thing that's going to lit me up inside us, is like kind of having that moment where you can actually kind of create real connection with someone, or create a little shift in someone's mind, or create a breakthrough with someone. And I ignored that path for a long time. And even when I was traveling the world, I did a bunch of e-commerce businesses, right? Tried getting some skin in the game that way, right? In entrepreneurship, did like 3 different businesses over a couple of years, had a little bit of success, but didn't really do it for me, man. So ultimately, on one trip, for whatever happened in life, a big sort of storm came in when I was in India, and just rocked me, man. I got like amoebic dysentery and kind of found myself in a state of adrenal fatigue for about close to 6 months. And man, that was sort of the biggest revolutionary moment of my life, because like I like everything was sort of like, my health was gone, my energy was gone. I couldn't run the businesses anymore. The e-commerce things that I was doing, I just wasn't into it. And that was the moment where I was like, Jesus Christ, like, what am I even doing here? Like, what am I even doing? I'm just traveling around the world, doing something I don't like doing. I'm kind of back in the same kind of stressed, unclear place I was when I lived in the States. And I was like, just had this moment where I was like, why don't I just coach? Why don't I just do that? Like, that's the thing I've always wanted to do. It's scary, but why don't I just do that? So, man, I just went for it. And the energy that came with that was like just insane. And you know, within a couple of years, I just built an amazing movement of men, right? Mostly men, some women. My program's called the Modern Warrior Implementation Program. So I work with a lot with men that are also stepping into their purpose. Now, I work with a lot with the marketing, the sales and stuff like this, but also a lot of stuff in the mindset. But like, I guess the biggest lesson in all that for me is like, okay, you know, it's all well and good making money. It's all well and good traveling. But at the end of the day, if you're not doing something that really lights you up inside, you know, those other things don't really stand the test of time. So for me, that sort of passion was the thing that drove this business home. And, you know, you've come and hung out with us there a little bit recently, Luke, and you can see the kind of vibe in there. I'm really blessed today, man, to have like the coolest group coaching program, the Modern Warrior, amazing people, an amazing partner, and the vibes are just lit, man. And most days I'm just waking up with tons of energy, tons of passion. You know, it gets more and more exciting as the days go on. So, man, totally killed your 60 seconds, but that was probably like 5 minutes, but there you go.
That's all good, man. It's all interesting, and it's given me because I've spoken to you a fair bit, but never really kind of gone into your story in that much detail. And it's interesting because it seems like quite a few people get into entrepreneurship fairly young, who I see who become successful, and that's not always the case. But like for myself, I started a secondhand store in my school when I was 11, and I know Ben, who we had on guest recently, started fairly young. I was in his kind of family. And you mentioned there, you sort of selling those fake IDs when you were around 16. So I guess my first question is, do you think, is it like a conscious choice for people to be like, I want to be an entrepreneur when they get to 30, 40 or whenever it is? Or is it something in the DNA, their environment that kind of is going to form those successful people. So I guess what I'm trying to ask is like, how much choice do people ask in their entrepreneurial, or how much say do they have in their entrepreneurial success? Or is it something that it's just like predefined?
Yeah, awesome question, man. Yeah, look, I think there's sort of two answers, like, or there's two kind of key things that I see that dictate whether that's going to be the case, whether that's going to be the path. And, you know, just like you there, you know, did you have entrepreneurial parents at all? Just a quick question on that.
Far from it, never anything entrepreneurial at all.
Okay, well, really interesting. What about like any kind of, you know, figures of influence, authority figures in your life that you kind of looked up to, or were you the kind of the torch bearer?
Yeah, not really, man. Like when I was sort of even 10, 11, for me, it's always just been, I think it's more like the money element. So from my dad, it was probably more this idea of saving, budgeting. Like we got this pocket money each week, and that was pretty much all we got, and had to then do chores to kind of get that. So for me, it's always this kind of, we have to find ways to make money. And so I think for me, that's like, yeah, it's not necessarily about, okay, I want to affect lives. At the time, it was more just a case of how am I going to make money? And when you're 11 in the UK, you're not going to get many jobs that are going to take you on. So I think that's what it was for me, but there's never really that kind of entrepreneurial element. And even until I was late teens, there was never really any person in my life that was entrepreneurial, to be honest.
Perfect, man. Perfect. So look, on that, Luke, I think there's really kind of two things that I see, you know. One is sort of, you know, what's sort of happening in your environment in your childhood that's going to start to, because it sounds like you gamify it. Your dad helped you gamify it a little bit, right? He gave these little tasks and you had to figure out ways to make money, kind of thing, right? So I was sort of in this environment as well, where my mom was running a hostel when I was a kid, and, you know, she was, you know, there was always kind of scarcity of money, but she was always looking for that next project. She was quite entrepreneurial, right? And she had me doing similar things, man. I remember I had to pick up cigarette butts, right, that people would throw on the floor, right? And I used to get one penny back in the day for each cigarette butt I picked up. So I'd pick up like 200, man. I get like £2. I'd be like, yeah, right, that was 200 penny sweets back in the day. But also my dad was, he was a tradie electrician, but he was also going into solar panels, doing a lot of different things. And look, that was just sort of the environment. I also, for me, like, they never did it. So I had this experience whereby they were both entrepreneurial, both looking for the next thing, but never really broke through and never really got to that place of abundance. And, you know, my dad, like, the most amazing, intelligent guy ever, but he's, you know, he's knocking on 60 now, and he's still out there, you know, time for money, you know, day in, day out. My mom is retired now, thankfully, but, you know, she didn't retire like in this abundant place, like, right? So, you know, for me, there was the entrepreneurial sort of thing, but there was also this sort of want to do something that my parents didn't do. And I'm not saying it has to be this sort of dynamic, but I think, you know, what I see consistently is like, okay, look, maybe there was entrepreneurial parents and maybe there was an issue, right, with money, right? And that created like an opening, like a wound, or like an opening in the person where, oh shit, there's now scarcity of money, right? Now I have to fill that wound with some value, right? So I have to create something. So yeah, man, I think like kind of childhood, your experience, all this kind of stuff plays a big role in it. And that other thing, that wound, right? So it can be anywhere in life. Pain is generally the biggest driver that humans have. So, you know, let's say you're kind of like me, for example, right? I was on this sort of mission, doing this thing, doing that thing, but my entrepreneurial career never really took off until I started, you know, going after coaching. And what was the catalyst for coaching? Well, it was pain. It was pain, which created an opening, right? So I think, you know, I teach a lot in the hero's journey. There's cycles of the hero's journeys, and you know, perhaps, you know, it also goes with age. Like, you know, you're a bit younger. I think you're quite unique that you're quite entrepreneurial from a young age. Let's say you didn't grow up with the parents or the environment that are going to influence that, right? Let's say you were just a normal guy. You work the job, you get sick of your job, and then you want to travel the world. You want to do this stuff, and then maybe you want to start a business. But what's going to be the thing that's going to get you to that place where you're going to want to start the business? Well, often it's you've gone so far, right? And life is now dissatisfactory, right? It's like there's something missing, right? Or maybe you push yourself off a cliff, right? You drank too much, you've had sex with too many other, you know, members of the opposite sex, and you're feeling miserable. And you kind of, what tends to happen is people tend to go into moments of transition or breakdown or catharsis, right? This would be the abyss in the hero's journey, where they're like, what the fuck am I doing? And that can present the opportunity to be like, I want to go more on the inspired path. I want to go on this other thing. I want to do this thing that means something to me, right? So just kind of life experience in general is a massive dictator. Now, if there's a question in there, I'm not sure about, like, if I don't have that life experience, what do I do? We can talk about that too, if you want. We can start to create some thoughts around that. But I'm not really sure exactly who your audience is. So
Yeah, I think there's a few dynamics at play. I think I see a fair few people where they kind of have this mindset of not just me in particular, but if I use myself an example, it's like, oh, it's all right for you, Luke. You got started at a young age. It's all right for you, Luke. You don't have children. Oh, it's all right to travel for you, Luke. It's this, and this, and it's kind of what I'm hearing. To be blunt, is just like it's excuses really in my mind. And it's not just that. It's like, okay, in business in general, it's this idea of, oh, I'm not entrepreneurial, or I'm not this and not that. And it's like, how many people do you hear? It's like, oh yeah, I want to start my own business. And it's like, well, why don't you, kind of thing. And so, yeah, I might be naive on that track. I don't know. But I think for me in general, it's, as you said, a lot of it, what I've seen comes from a point of pain. So it's like, well, people don't necessarily just wake up one day and go, oh, I'm going to quit my job and start a business today, kind of thing. I think is this lead up from different areas. And I know from people that I've worked with a lot of the time, there's a buildup of the pain there, but then it's also matched with opportunity. And I know I've seen videos where you talk about people who are not problem aware, it's like solution aware. And it's like a lot of people that have these issues but don't even necessarily know about the opportunities. I think there's some sort of matching going on there where it's like they have these frustrations, they have their reasons for whatever entrepreneurship they want to do, and then they find the match there in terms of someone to help them with that or an opportunity there. I think the one area, because that is a huge topic, and if you've got any thoughts that we can go into, but I think the one area I want to ask you about and your thoughts on, or potentially people getting into business for maybe the wrong reason, so to speak. And so for me, that would be people who go and they want this gratification from someone or something in their life. And so then it's almost about they take choices where they gain approval or something from other people. And for me, I think that's quite dangerous, but I kind of want to get your thoughts first and see what you think. And then, yeah, if I have anything else to add, I'll add that there. So I know I've given you quite a bit of information there, but yeah, just whatever your sort of thoughts are and whatever you think, like it can be as specific or as broad as you want to be.
So the question is based around people getting into entrepreneurship, like to play an image game, to show people they're this new sort of Instagram entrepreneur and I'm making money and I got a car, then I'm going to have approval and people are going to love me, and probably at the root cause of that, then, my mommy and daddy are going to accept me maybe, or something like that, or my peer groups are going to accept me, something like that. Is that kind of what you're touching on? Yeah.
And I think it's just like, maybe it's like, okay, what is in your mind, if there is one, a good reason for getting into business? Because I think it is a kind of a, with social media and people's lives looking like the perfect, people sharing the highs of business, I guess it is quite natural to see these things and desire them, I guess. So yeah, in terms of, I guess it's getting into business. So we talked about that. Say for example, it's someone who wants to get into business and we understand there's something there, that pain that's driven them to that. But now they're like thinking about it. And it's like, okay, well, why should someone get into business, I suppose, as opposed to just rocking up to their job that they're making money from? If there's no risk in that, it's easy, right?
Yeah, it is easy, and it's a great question. I totally get it now. I've got a good answer. So there's multiple reasons why somebody could get into business, and I don't want to, you don't want to take someone's why away from them, right? Because you want someone to source their own reasons why, and you can do exercises around that, like what do I want to create in my life? All these type of things. Creating freedom, right? That's a cool driver, man. It's a powerful driver. I think man in general, is on a search to create freedom. However, I do see one, what you might say, reason why that is just incredibly powerful. That's probably the most powerful when it comes to dictating whether or not a business is going to be successful. And it's the same one that I've kind of talked about myself in this story there a little bit. You see, I work with a lot of coaches as well, a lot of personal development workers, mindset workers, people that I would say are on the inspired path, right? Meaning they have overcome challenges in their life. They've found solutions to certain problems, whether that be in health, in wealth, in relationships, in personal development. And naturally, because they've found solutions to that, I think they're really inspired to help other people do the same, right? So they've figured out the problem, right? And they found solutions to the problem. Now, there's not really a feeling like it when you can actually ask someone really powerful questions to the point where they can have actual little mini breakthroughs and they can go, okay, I get it now. And you're doing that through your story. You're doing that through the things that you've learned, the things that you figured out yourself, and you recognize the problem, right? That's an incredible feeling, right? That is just like that. There's a feeling of fulfillment and power that comes with that, good power. So that, for me, that is the textbook, if you look at the hero's journey, that is the textbook sort of sharing your boon or coming back to to the known world, right? To save the day in the movies, right? But you're not really saving people, you know, you're just being of service, right? And you're taking all the stuff that you've learned in the trenches, in the abyss, and you're giving it meaning, right? By actually turning it into gold and actually helping people. So there's something amazing to that, man. So if anybody is out there and they're like, look, I know I've figured out this stuff. I know I have value to give. I know I can help people. Then you have what I consider, if you look at my Modern Warrior system, right, the hero's journey is the centerpiece. That is the key fundamental ingredient. You have, like in the Bible, I say, build your house on solid rock, not on sinking sand. That is the solid rock. That is the solid rock. And everything else, the strategies, the tactics, the skills that you need to learn is very much possible if you start there, I believe.
That's awesome. And I think, yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I think it's sort of like that, building it on a rock, that reason why, I suppose you've kind of described to me, that at least how I understood it, that sort of foundation that's going to drive you. Because I think if someone's watching this and they're just getting going, I think Ben talks about it in the podcast a couple of weeks ago that we did, where he's like, your issues are just going to continue and you're never going to solve everything. And as you grow, and I think we talked about it before we went on air, it's that idea of entrepreneurship can be really fun at the start. And you kind of get to the point where you're making the money and you've got these things, and it's like, where do you go from here? Because if you just then stagnate, it can be unfulfilling. You're not having that growth. I think, as you kind of said, if you have that drive to help other people, I think that's massive. Have I summed that sort of up right there?
You have, but it's really interesting. Like, and like, I heard a great quote recently, actually. There's the sign of true intelligence is to be able to hold two conflicting opinions in your mind at one time. And just as you said that, I thought of like a total counter reason, which I'd love to share as well. So what you're talking about there, and we were chatting a little bit before the call, right? I've got a client comes in, he's like making 25K a month, right? Totally miserable. Doesn't know if he wants to scale the business, because if he scales the business, right, he's just going to have more problems, right? And he's already strung out. He's already overworked, right? And he's like, you know, he's trying to be like, all right, yeah, I want to scale. I know how to scale, but I'm not really sure I want to. So he's not really grounded in a reason why he's doing the thing. Now, he's also losing the energy he had for the business, right? So the energy is starting to go. It's like, I just don't really have the passion for it anymore. I've kind of done it, you know, like, and so I was like, you know, diving into, you know, what it was like when he was starting the business. And he's like, you know, he comes from nothing. I grew up in a building site making, you know, tiny bit of cash each year. And this whole game of him getting into entrepreneurship, he was like watching YouTube videos and learning from, you know, incredible mentors and gurus or whoever he was looking at that was inspiring him. And this whole idea that he could actually create freedom, right? And he could do something different. He could go the path less traveled and he could make something of himself, really lit him up. So he chose this thing, right? This niched thing, and he went for it and he created something out of it. But now all of a sudden he's in this place where the energy's gone. So his why at that time was to create freedom. Like, I want to get approval, you know, or I want to make a name for myself, or, you know, or I want to do something cool. Like, there could have been other drivers in there. That's not all a problem, right? We don't have to source these, you know, pure white light drivers that are only from inspiration. Like, look, we all have thorns and things that drive us in different ways, right? Based on how we've been brought up. But the point of the matter is, he got to this place, and it's like, he's now in this place where I can see he has tons of options, right? So he's done the hardest part. He's got the boulder to the top of the hill. And as far as I can see, all he needs to do to double his business is to just basically double down on the marketing that he's already doing, right? But he doesn't want to do that because of what I discussed before. So now is a beautiful opportunity for this person to be like, all right, well, how can I now take my focus away from just the numbers, just the sales, and start to think about the experience that I want to create? Maybe I could build a team. Maybe I could help a lot of people in different countries, right, around the world, you know, level up their lives, right, make a much better income than they would just working for some job there. What could I do for my family, right? You know, how can I continue to grow? Leading a team, being a leader, right? Having to learn this whole new game of standard operating procedures and managing a team, and, you know, leadership quality and core ethos of the business, all this kind of new game, right? How can I get inspired by something there, right? You see, and that is very much, I believe, connected to the hero's journey now, because it is very much this, like, that fire that's there that is helping people, but it's not being a coach, right? It's being a leader. So I think these kind of principles apply across the board. Now, why I got onto this thread, Naval Ravikant, who's an incredible thinker, you know, we're kind of talking about purpose here and why. So he talks how your primary purpose in life before you do anything and everything else is, and I don't want to misquote him, so I don't know if this is exactly true, but it's basically to create financial abundance first and foremost. Because before you get to that point, you're always somewhat affected by scarcity, right? And when you're affected by scarcity, you're making poor decisions. You're looking through the lens of how do I save money, as opposed to how do I invest more to create more, to grow more. And money is abundant and opportunities are abundant, right? When you hit those levels in entrepreneurship, you start getting up to your multiple 5 figures every single month, right? All of a sudden you become so much more opportunistic. You have so much more belief. And when you have that, the grounds, that basis, that security, and you don't ever have to worry and that scarcity isn't dragging you down, what does that open up? It opens up a lot of room for creativity to come through, right? The creativity to come through you. So look, my journey has been the one of like, I found a thing that I love doing and that's been my path, but there may be another journey that's like, look, I just want to make friggin' money and I want to be free. And that may be just as powerful of a reason why to get you to a certain level. And then maybe you can go explore that purpose piece and go and do ayahuasca in the jungle or something of this nature. I don't think there's one right way. It's just kind of about how you, like, the one thing that you need is you need laser focus on one thing to make it happen, to get the boulder to the top of the hill. Wherever you're sourcing that laser focus, wherever that's coming from, it can come from different places, I think.
Yeah, I think that's super powerful. And I can definitely relate to that, because for me, it's definitely been almost purely about the money for quite a while. And now I've got to that point almost where I feel that financial abundance. And now for me, it's a lot more about, okay, what is the new driving force? Because a lot of it for me, it was, I just want to make money really. And I felt like I was going to make more through business and I enjoyed it more. But now it is sort of shifting that. So I think that's important, that people aren't like, they have to find this one right reason, I suppose, for their business. It's whatever drives them, I suppose. So yeah, I think that's really powerful. Thank you. I just want to shift a bit, because you talked a bit about, well, you talked quite a lot about the pain, struggles and areas there. And when you introduced yourself, you mentioned that period, I think someone said it was a 6-month period where you really had that, I don't know exactly what you said it was, but that fatigue and the brain fog and you couldn't even kind of go and do exercise sort of thing. So like, how was that period in terms of, like, how did that make you feel, and how did you see a way out of that? Like, because that must have been pretty scary, I'd imagine. At least for me, it sounds like 6 months is a long period of time.
Yeah, it was really scary, man. Look, I'd say the first 3.5 months were much worse. There was some light at the end of the tunnel the more it went on a little bit. But essentially the core of what happened was it related to like the gut in some way, shape or form. And I've been down the rabbit hole trying to figure it out, man. When you have like these types of problems, Western medicine doesn't always have the answers, and that's scary, right? In fact, they don't have like any answers, because, it's just, here's antibiotics, that'll fix you. But as far as I could see, I had no actual symptoms. Thyroid was perfect. Bloods were perfect, right? Hormones were good. Electrolytes were good. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with me? So basically, I was trying to figure that out. But my experience was, I was in India with my partner and I just got really sick, like super, super sick, like couldn't eat food for like 4 days. And I just basically just never came back from that. And it was just like, I was just sort of stuck in this hazy fog, basically. I was in a constant state of like subtle stress and anxiety, right? And I understand why, because my stomach was ruined and you've got this vagus nerve, which links your gut and your brain, right? So I was just in this constant state of stress. I could barely walk up a flight of stairs. Every time I stand up, I get super lightheaded. So I couldn't exercise. And that was an interesting thing, man, because like the one thing that kind of got me through all the years when I was living in New York, this high-paced lifestyle, and when I was traveling, I was doing a lot of yoga and kung fu. The one thing that always grounded me before I had like my purpose was my exercise, right? And it was that routine every single day, right? Doing it, whether it was kung fu, capoeira, yoga, whatever that was. And that was gone. So I now no longer had that release I had every day. And I was also in this new relationship, and I really wanted that to thrive, but here's me, I can't even show up. So it was challenging, man. It was scary. It was really scary. I was scared about I might lose my partner. I was wondering if I was ever going to get my health back. And yeah, I was down this rabbit hole of like looking at YouTube videos and friggin' diving into podcasts and learning all this stuff about the gut that is just a rabbit hole. And if there's any advice I could ever give anybody that is in a situation where they have some issue with their digestion or their microbiome, do not please ever go down these rabbit holes, just go and find a good natural path, because there's incredibly trained people there that are totally under the radar that a lot of people don't know about. And they have incredibly powerful solutions, but it's not, you can't find that stuff on Google. You can, but you'll just go down a rabbit hole and you'll end up taking the wrong thing and you'll end up doing yourself more damage than good. That's what I did. So find a good person, speed up the process, and find someone to help you through that, because they will. And eventually I did kind of identify sort of what some of the issues were, and it related to the gut. Perhaps there was a lot of old things that were really building up to that. Right? Like I was on a plant-based diet for a couple of years. Don't do that at all anymore. Thought it looked all good. Read loads of books on it. And it was like, yeah, this is the best diet. And then I discovered lots of new information when I went on this journey of how, if you're not eating meat or whatever, your stomach acid production goes way down, hydrochloric acid, these types of things, your digestion gets weaker and weaker. And there's lots of other things that happen. So I think as well, the stress of me constantly traveling around the world was a build up to that, jumping over, this is called circadian stress, jumping through time zones multiple times a year. And then there was just a kind of misalignment with my work as well. I felt was affecting that as well. Like the e-commerce businesses I was doing, I was kind of staying up till 2-3 o'clock in the morning. And it was always this kind of game of almost gambling, right? You're just doing Facebook ads and your sales, and then you're moving on to the next thing and the next thing. And it just wasn't really fulfilling. Didn't really feel like I was helping people. So I can look and I can be like, yeah, I got this stomach problem, man. And there was a cascade of problems thereafter. But, looking at the bigger picture in life, the way my philosophy around life is that there was a lot of things I was out of balance in many different areas of my life. And this kind of led me to this precipice where I was susceptible to something like that to come in. And that thing came in, slapped me across the face, knocked me on my ass. And it was terrible. But today, am I thankful it happened? I'm so grateful it happened, because I'm living the life I want to live today, man. I'm in Brazil right now. I'm like literally looking over the computer here at an incredible beach. It's so beautiful. I'm hanging out here with my fiance. That relationship's all good, man. And we made it through, and the amazing business came out the other end of it. So yeah.
No, that's awesome. I'm glad to hear. And it is interesting for me just because I listened to another podcast, and the guest that was on there was, I think it was kayaking, a lady who was world champion, I think Olympic gold medalist, something like that. And she went through, sounds similar, but slightly different for her. She went through a period where basically at the end of it, she understood that she's really extrovert. She needs to be around other people. And she took up a new coach who's based in the States. And so trained a lot of the time by herself in the UK, and eventually just went through this period where she just had this fatigue and just kind of broke down, like literally couldn't exercise, went to experts all over the world and just couldn't kind of figure out what was going wrong. And like when you are to that high level of sort of Olympic gold medal and everything, that's your life. It must be kind of crazy. So yeah, like it does. It sounds scary to me, but yeah, it sounds like it's something that has now strengthened you going forward. And that seems to be the way. It seems to be these struggles that we go through when you get to the other side. It's like those are the kind of things that drive you to change and to improve. And yeah, so thanks for sharing. And it seems to me like I was going to ask sort of how did you manage to get through that? But it seemed to be that finding the person to help with that. Is that right? Like, did you find some expert in the area to help, or was it a combination of things?
I found Paul Check, man. So I found Paul Check, and I went and did a degree, or like a course, like a holistic health and lifestyle course, and basically he's got this 4-pillar system, which is you've got your diet, your quiet, your health, and your happiness, right? And these 4 are like your 4 pillars of life. And if any one of these pillars is out of balance or breaks down, you're susceptible to something like that happening. And if 2 go, the whole castle sort of collapses. So my thing was to get my life back in balance first and foremost. I'm very diligent around my sleep and all these types of stuff, very diligent around my diet and routines and rhythms, and doing things like qigong, right? Things like that build energy, exercise that builds energy. So but that was sort of like, I still ended up months later with like terrible digestion, terrible gut issues. It didn't fix. So, and by that time I was already sort of looking at the coaching and getting into this, and then, I was starting to invest in some programs, and I was kind of getting over this stupid idea that I see is pretty endemic in the culture, that I can do better researching this stuff on Google and YouTube myself, as opposed to getting an expert to help me with it. It's the dumbest thing in the world. It basically just says you don't value your time whatsoever. Okay. And as well as I do, Luke, what's your number one resource these days?
Yeah, it's my mentor. It's the people around me. It's the people who've done what I want to do.
Yeah. And like time is the other thing I was going at there. Like you like, I value my time more than anything now.
Sorry, in terms of valuing, time. I think, it's interesting. I I said time massively, but for me now, I kind of reclassify that as energy, because for me, there's like time, you can invest that in different things, but it's almost energy is more important. It's like what things give me energy. So it's that almost I kind of think of time, but to a new level, if that makes sense. So you kind of have the monetary cost. Then for me, the next most valuable thing, or far more valuable than money, is the time cost. And then from there, it's this level of energy. So I try and look at things like what's give me energy, what's draining. And a lot of things that I'm removing now is like social media and dealing with negative interactions and those kind of things that really drain my energy. And I'm trying to spend it on areas in the business that give me energy, that also leverage my time, and then in life as well, that give me more energy. So yeah, time, super important. I don't know if you want to add anything on there.
No, you're dead right, man. Because like, if you can get back into that mindset of like, look, I'm going to figure everything out on my own. Like, I had a buddy text me yesterday, he wants to get into property development. And he's like, look, man, this guy, it's like 3K for this program. And I don't know if I should do it. You know, I might just go figure it out on my own. And I'm like, well, look, man, you're obviously looking at the thing as cost as opposed to investment. So here's some questions. Is it going to save you time in your search, right? Is it going to present a better opportunity for you? Are you going to make a better decision that may make you that 3K back, right? And, you know, like, but just ultimately, is it going to save you time and stress and work and worry? Yes. You know, so it's not cost, it's investment. And I can look back now at this fatigue I was in of trying to just figure out all this stuff, as opposed to figuring out where all the good practitioners are and contacting every single one of them and having a conversation with all of them. That's what I would have done if I went back there, as opposed to trying to figure it out on my own. And I say this as well because I think there is this sort of issue with a lot of people online trying to grow businesses and stuff. They look to people like Gary Vee and people that are out there that are kind of gurus in the sky, and they're just sort of like, all right, I got to post everywhere. I got to be all over every single social media platform. That's the thing, right? Let me get TikTok, let me get LinkedIn, let me get Snapchat. And they don't, what they're doing is they're scattering their energy all over the place, right? As opposed to focusing on the things that are really going to bring it home with people, right? Focusing on your core message, right? Developing your mindset, right? Learning the art and the science of sales, and being able to actually have good conversations with people and lead that into, you know, fruitful relationships. So I say it because I think you're in a similar mindset, and, you know, I've been kind of bouncing around with you for a little bit now. I see that you are very quick. Oh, that's a cool opportunity. Let me invest in that. I'm very much the same. I'm always looking for it. Where's the next mentor? Where's the next thing? Because I know that's going to save me copious amounts of time and trial and error by just, you know, going the path that somebody else has already forged for me, right? Letting them show me the way. So yeah,
for sure. And it really is interesting with the likes of Gary Vee, and I'm not just saying him only, but in general, what I sort of see the more I delve into the business is that there's lots of layers underneath. It's like people talk about, even like Russell Brunson, they'll talk about the marketing, and they'll talk about the hype. They'll like build out the funnel, this how you get the traffic or whatever, and all the kind of sexy stuff, post everywhere, whatever, do this as you sort of said there, spread your message. But then they don't necessarily go into, okay, how are you going to do your operations, building out SOPs, here are the systems you're going to need, here's the tax work you're going to need, you're going to actually have to set up business in different areas, and you're going to deal with customer service, you're going to deal with refunds, you're going to deal with all this kind of crap. And you're not going to have, when shit hits the fan or when you're feeling down, you're not going to be able to message Gary Vee and go, hey Gary, I'm struggling with this kind of thing. And I think this is in general the danger with social media. Going back again, it's like you don't see the true picture. I've got a friend who travels a lot and has business, and he shares some stuff, and he actively admits that he works a hell of a lot because he enjoys it. He likes building the business. But what he shares a lot of the time is like the break he'll have walking along the beach for 2 minutes when he's just going snips to the shop, back to then working for the rest of the day from 5 to 11 p.m. pretty much. And I'm not saying that's unhealthy, it's what he enjoys, but people don't necessarily see the whole behind the scenes, and people don't see the tough areas, and people might see the revenue but don't see all the costs, they don't see the refunds, they don't see these kind of things. And so I totally agree. And when you have someone in your corner and you have someone who's actually been there and done some business to you, and you can leverage their experiences, I think that's huge. And that's what I try and share with people I work with. It's like, when I started, I was uni student, had very little money, and had this mindset of utilizing YouTube and these other areas to get started. And don't get me wrong, it was okay for a while, but I actually found these people that I still know today that supported me there. So yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's so valuable to find those people that you can leverage their experience. And yes, of course, you're going to need to go and do things. I'm not saying that you pay someone a few grand and they're going to solve all your problems magically, but it's like, it's hard work. in the right direction as opposed to just being busy and consuming hypey content.
Yeah, and it can be dangerous as well a bit, Luke, you know, like I went down that e-commerce rabbit hole and I was determined enough over a couple of years to get to the point where I actually, you know, made some profits out of it. But a lot of people don't. And if you look at what's out there online, it's just, there's a lot of kind of stuff that's like, look, here's the latest shiny, you know, thing. Here's the silver bullet. Here's the, you know, route to some fast cash. But that's like the age old con. Right? There is no such thing as a silver bullet. There is no such thing as chocolate cake cures cancer. You have to put in the work. And you see, when you look at Russell Brunson, who I actually like, right? Gary Vee, I think he's good on mindset and personal development. I like him. I don't agree with the strategy that he tells most people that are starting out to follow for the most part. But, you know, I'm sure other people totally disagree, and that's okay. But if you look at like Russell Brunson, so he isn't talking about SOPs and stuff like you're saying, right? He's talking about how do you get a sales funnel, how do you get it off the ground. And I think, look, this can work well for existing businesses. But if you're like literally at like ground zero and it's like I'm going straight into sales funnels, that's you trying to run before you can walk. And what happens when you try to run before you can walk, right? Kid gets up, he's going to fall flat in his face. See, I see people all the time. They come in, right? And they were like, yeah, man, I set up a sales funnel. So I work with a lot of coaches, right? What's the most common sales funnel? You create like a little video training and then you push people to, hey, come and jump on a discovery call with me, right? That's the thing. So ice cold traffic, bang. Well, what I see for the most part is their show up rates to those calls are about 20%. Right, we have a show up rate of about 75% in the Modern Warrior, right? The show up rates can be about 20% or less sometimes. Right, the close rate can be about 10 to 15% or less, right? Which means you're getting rejected about 85, 90% of the time. What's that going to do to your energy? How is that going to affect the next person that you're jumping on the line with? Right? Are you going to be able to hold space for them when you've been just totally rejected and like dragged along this sales process with someone who didn't want to be there and had no intention of buying? It's going to be really, really painful. So I see these type of funnels being pushed a lot out there that don't work because the truth is the strategy's wrong. It's going straight to ice cold market. But also the other thing is that like, if you're new, you don't know the language of the marketing. You don't know how to properly indoctrinate someone through the content that you're doing before they get on the line with you. And you're probably not going to have all the systems in place that are required, the retargeting, the email sequence, and this stuff, the messaging that's in it. If you haven't worked with people already, you don't really understand the depth and breadth of your ideal client's problem. Well, the messaging that you're creating is probably not going to be relevant enough. It's not going to be on point enough. And therefore, when they get to that call, they're not going to be bought in already. They're not going to be already pre-sold. You're going to have to do all the work on the call, right? And if they're just someone that's just opting in for a free thing and then jumping on the line with the first guy they meet, you know, the example is like kind of jumping into bed with the first guy you meet, they're probably not the perfect type of client that's going to get invested, you know, 2, 3, 10, 15K into your program, right? They're probably not. So I think in the early days, you have to be a bit more intelligent with how you're going about getting off the ground, essentially, you know, and I say this because a lot of my audience are, you know, they come in, they have some clients, they're kind of off the ground, but there's that sub kind of 10K mark. You have to be smart about how you do it. You have to try and have really good conversations with people, right? And you have to just, I don't know if you want me to go deep into kind of strategy and approaches or any of that stuff, but I wouldn't recommend funnels on day one. And I also wouldn't recommend Gary Vee's post everywhere, be everywhere, because you'll burn yourself out, you'll overwhelm yourself. It's like, get clear on who you're serving, what it is you do, and kind of focus on one thing and drive it home, essentially. And, you know, you don't need any paid marketing. You don't need to be on all these social media platforms to get yourself off the ground, to get your first few clients or whatever in the door.
Yeah, I think, look, it's a tough one because obviously we could spend hours and hours and hours talking about strategy. And I think at the end of the day, for me, if people are getting going, whatever they're doing, it's this idea of imperfect action to me. It's like, you're not trying to make this perfect thing in whatever business you're doing. It's about getting off the ground and making things work. So I know for me, like I started my Amazon business back in August 2018, and in Jan 2019 I started just documenting my journey. And like I didn't really know what I was going to do with that, but I had a Facebook group. I started doing a few sort of YouTube videos, and I was just sharing what I was doing. I didn't necessarily make any money from it. I might have got like 50 or 100 quid a month just from random affiliate things, because like tools that I was using. But then to July of last year, then I was like, I've kind of got my business now where I'm working on it 2-4 hours a week. It's systemized. I've got this audience. I can help them. And that's where I kind of put together the training that I have. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is just like, I didn't then go and put together like all these sales funnels. I didn't try and make it perfect. I literally reached out to a bunch of people. I posted like, hey, I'm doing 3 15-20 minute calls. I found out what they're struggling with in general. I started getting engaged in dialogues, and then I reached back out to them and I was like, hey, I've decided I'm going to put this thing together. Here's what the offer is going to look like. And just the first 5 people, I offered them it was like 250 quid a sign up, and I just got foot in the door and I slowly built it up. So I think what I'm trying to say is that it's not about having the perfect strategy. It's about, I think, focusing on sort of one thing and getting your foot in the door and slowly building that up over time, because it does take time. And yes, it's a combination of trying to head in the right direction the best that you can, and that's through having someone like a mentor or training program or whatever, but also, as you said, just putting that energy into it. And yeah, it is tough because we can talk about this for hours, but I think that's what I did and what I find. And it's really comes down to just investing your time and in the right things and being protective of your time, being protective of your energy, and not trying to do a million things or worry too much about being everywhere, as you said, but it's about doing those right things and spending some time in them. That's my thoughts. I don't know if you've got anything to add there.
Yeah, I'll just tack on a little bit, mate. So, maybe I can throw a link somewhere at some point so somebody can check out the Modern Warrior system, right? But it's essentially a 7-step process. Like level 1 is for kind of sub 10K, right? And then level 2 is really for growing and scaling. But when you look at like I said earlier on, the hero's journey is the centerpiece, right? That's where we start. Okay, so that's like the fundamental ingredient, but it's also honoring your story and all this kind of stuff, right? That kind of gives you the fire to be like, yeah, I'm doing this, right? No matter what. It's also getting invested in the program, right? First and foremost, that's because I'm talking about the process I kind of take my clients through, right? So it's like I'm investing in a program, all in, bang, right? So then we start working on the mindset. And we start cutting out all this kind of stuff that we've been talking about, this kind of bright, shiny object stuff, the overwhelming, I'm trying to be everywhere, I'm trying to do everything, and it's getting people very laser focused on what they're doing, right? So step 1, hero's journey. Step 2, mindset, right? Get them showing up the right way, approaching it. And then it's about creating, so step 3 would be your offer, right? And we really just focus on MVP offer. It means minimum viable product, right? So just like you're saying, you put together a minimum viable product and you went out and you tested the market, right? And once you got that validation, you started to grow from there, right? See, people are trying to, if you look at a tree, some trees anyway, the way they grow, before they build their roots really far into the ground, right? They shoot up to the light, right? They shoot up and then the roots come, right? So it's like the early phase of entrepreneurship, you kind of really have to adopt this sort of, I'm pushing the boulder to the top of the hill no matter what energy, right? I'm going for it. So it's very much about your hero's journey, your mindset, putting together this core offer, this MVP offer. It doesn't need to be perfect. And then it's learning the one skill that you just have to learn if this is going to work. And this is another thing that people want to completely ignore, right? What is playing with funnels and playing with assets and playing with all these different things give you the license to do? Gives you the license to not focus on sales, not focus on conversations, right? And people get stuck in this creation sedation mode where, I'm putting together this new asset in this ebook and I got this got all these different, I'm going to start this membership thing, man. I'm on Instagram and da-da-da-da-da-da. You're not focusing on sales. You're not focusing on conversations. You're not learning a really powerful sales process. So what we do with people is we bring them in, get rid of the fluff. Here's journey, aligned, awesome. Here's the mindset system structured. Now here's your offer. Let's put that together. Let's make it sure it's something that people want, sounds appealing, very, very basic, very straightforward, almost be in the frame of look, I'm starting out this thing, I'm going to build it out as I go. I'm going to develop my process as I go. I'm just looking for 5 people to kick it off. Would you be interested in going on that journey with me? Right, and working this out together, and I'll give you a discount for that, right? It works if you learn the sales process that we teach, called the guided discovery method. If you learn that, man, you can get your business up to 10K a month within no time, with no paid ads, any of this stuff, right? By just following those kind of simple steps in the Modern Warrior system. So I can pop that somewhere, training somewhere, if somebody wants to go a little bit deeper to kind of anchor that concept. It's pretty powerful. If somebody's sub 10K, that philosophy that's there, it will save a lot of heartache for sure.
Yeah, awesome. We can drop that below in on YouTube or podcast, wherever people are listening. Cool. No, I appreciate that. And I think I want to go on a bit of a tangent now in terms of, this is a question I like to ask people who've sort of had a bit of success in business. I know success is all relative, but people who've been in it for a while and sort of maybe speaking to someone who's getting started or looking to get started. My question is, what are the things that they don't tell you in starting a business? What are those things for you?
It's a great question, man. I think you opened up a few of them. Can you lead the way for me and tell me a few examples so I can get on that train of thinking?
Yeah, sure. I think a few for me is this idea that it's not going to sort of solve all your problems, in that the problems are always going to evolve. I think there's the idea of people kind of find it's a sexy thing where you kind of, maybe it depends, because it depends on the business, and it depends on people are saying. So it's like you got the Tim Ferriss 4-hour work week, which works. This idea of, okay, you've got to put in the work. to get there. And then even then, things are still going to evolve. You're still going to have problems that are changing. And I think then it's also the element of, for me, a big one is this idea between then being able to separate personal and business. I don't think people talk about that a lot. And for me, that's a big thing. Like if you have a 9 to 5, you can kind of do that. You go home and you don't necessarily think about it. Okay, there is some stress and carryover. I'm not a huge person to be able to speak on that because I've never really had that sort of 9 to 5 job. But for me, business, a big thing is, and I'm working on all the time, is trying to find this balance between business and personal life. So being able to go, okay, this is when I'm working, I work hard, I enjoy it, but then I can switch off and go on to other areas I want to focus on. So yeah, things like that maybe, and things like the fact you got to do accounting, you're going to have refunds, you're going to have these things are going to happen. So yeah, those kind of areas where, look, I'm not trying to be all doom and gloomy, but I think a big thing for people is understanding, is this actually right for them to get into business? And maybe just making people aware of both the positives and the negatives, so to speak.
Awesome. So I think you did an amazing job there, kind of talking about some of the kind of technical life reality of running a business, right? Where I'd love to take this from is a little bit more of a kind of spiritual angle and or personal growth angle, because I think it kind of correlates with the whole podcast that we've gone so far. You know, earlier you were kind of touching on, you know, like when is the time for someone to start a business, or, you know, what are some of the key kind of things that you see working with starting a business? And I said, like, you know, relating to age, relating to life experiences, relating to what you've gone through. I think at some point, if, you know, hero's journey again, right? If you have certain moments, painful moments in your life, you know, you're naturally almost programmed to want to resolve those things, right? So if you were a child and I don't know, your parents broke up or something, right? Maybe you have an abandonment complex and you want to create an element of security in your life because that's the thing that's going to make you feel secure. I think entrepreneurship, it tends to appeal to people that I see really successful when they're kind of at that stage in their life where they want to create like a form of resolution to the point where they can really be the person that they aspire to be, right? Be that leader, be that father figure, be that kind of mature, masculine or feminine guiding light, right? But the only way to get there, right? Socrates says teaching is the highest form of learning, right? So that growth, that final stage comes through the act of actually doing it, right? That's the way of the mentor, right? So, and again, hero's journey, misconception, people think they have to have everything figured out, have to have it perfected before they go and do the thing, right? In fact, you're not supposed to have it perfected, right? That's not the way it works. You become master of the two worlds or whatever it's called by actually sharing the stuff that you've learned, right? And through that process, you kind of become the person that you want to be. So what are some difficulties that people encounter? Well, when you step on this path and you go all in on it, like 100%, shit's going to come up. Like undoubtedly, like relationships. Like, so I work with pure client-based business owners. Welcome to the game, my friends, right? If you're building funnels or doing marketing for people, you have massive, like there's so much at stake there. It's so high ticket. There's so much expectations from clients, right? There may be a lack of clarity in the beginning. What am I doing? Am I doing the ads or the funnels or what's going to go on? It's going to be friction. So you got to learn to be able to deal with friction, deal with people and manage people in the right way, right? Holding space for groups of people that you're coaching, right? That's very challenging. It requires you to kind of really step up and step into it. There's also like the mirror, it's something crazy. Let's say, right, here's an example. Let's say you're not paying your bills, right? And, you know, or you got these things, this old loan that is just like in the back of the closet there somewhere that you're not even thinking about, right? And then you show up to a sales call and the guy at the end of the call goes, sounds great, man. I just can't afford it right now. Can we talk about it in a week? Money objection, right? Then the next call, same thing happens. What the hell? The next call, same thing happens, right? If you look at the probability of getting, like, you maybe like got a 1 in 10 chance of getting that particular objection. Statistically, maybe it's slightly higher. Maybe it's a more common objection. If you played a probability game, right? You multiply 10 by 10, right? You get 100, and then that by 10 again, right? 1 in 1,000 times, you're going to get 3 sales objections in a row. But I see it happening all the time. 3 money objections in a row. You see it happening all the time, right? People are like, I keep getting that same excuse. Person tells me they don't have time. Right. Well, where are you not giving people time in your life? Where are you freaking all over the place? None of any time to do anything. Right. So what entrepreneurship invites of you is you got to clean up your closet. You got to clean up your crap. And that is the thing, going through the struggles and taking a hard look at yourself. That's like the hardest piece, because you have to grow with it. You have to grow with it. And that's probably, for me, that's the most challenging piece. If you don't like growth, if there isn't something in you that's like a bit like, I'm going to go and do this ayahuasca thing. Bring me all the fear. Oh, Jesus. You know, like, whoa, you know, if you don't like going to the gym and doing some big ass squats or some deadlifts or something like that, or you're just not up for a bit of pain, a bit of grit, or just getting a bit vulnerable, it's going to be a hard path for you, man. Like it is. It's not a quick fix. It's not like, here you go. But if you are up for that stuff and then you break through, just like you finish that big ass workout and you feel amazing after it, when we start getting results in entrepreneurship, we start attracting the right people, amazing people that are aligned to you and aligned to your message, that you vibe with, that you actually enjoy conversing with, and you're leading them, helping them create results in their life, and they're paying you copious amounts of money to do that, and you're having fun in the process. And you can do it in a leverage way, like you have, like I do, where you just kind of coach once a week in big groups and all this kind of stuff. Well, you just set yourself up not only for an incredible like level of freedom, incredible level of income, but an incredible level of purpose. You get to actually enjoy what you're doing. You get to do something way cooler than the average guy who's some, you know, friggin', I don't know, executive or something, right? So there's drawbacks and there's difficulties, but the benefits out the other end are amazing. The question is, do you want to go on the path? Do you want to go all in? And are you up for it, right? If you are up for it, there is a way, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love the way you put that. And to me, think about it to myself, and it makes a lot of sense. Like for me, it always that growth that I really enjoy. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I think you summarized that really well. I appreciate it. Yeah, I think it's a different viewpoint to what I hear a lot, or a different way of saying it at least. So that's great. Look, I want to go on a bit of a more of a personal question for me, something I'm curious about. So it's to do with relationships, and I'm curious, like, so you talk about Tara, your partner, your fiance, and I'm curious, and like, how is having Tara around influenced or affected your business? And is she business minded, or does she like talking about business, or is it a case of you kind of have your business, then you switch off with Tara? So yeah, I'll pass on to you to tell me a little bit about that, because I'm curious then about everyone else.
Yeah, for sure, man. Look, so we had Elliot Holtz the other day. I invited you to come along. So he came and did a session at the Modern Warrior. Awesome dude, man. I've followed him for years. And, you know, because a lot of the guys are kind of in that just kind of getting started phase. Obviously, Elliot's built a huge business, and he's got over, I think, a couple of channels on YouTube, over 2 million people in combination or something. So he's crushed it. Like, he's absolutely crushed it over the years. So we were kind of asking him, like, look, what were some of the things back in the day that, like, if you were to give some advice to your past self, like, what would you say? Or just what were some things that if you were to give advice to somebody would be big if they were starting out? And he's like, family. He's like, look, I had a wife, I had kids, I had a reason to do this. Right. And, you know, I can't remember all the nuances of what he said, but as soon as he said it, it just lit something up in me. And I was chatting to Elliot, just myself, one-on-one before the call. And we were talking about this before we jumped on. And I was like, man, that's what I'm going to say now as well. I felt when I found Tara, before I went on this trip, so I'm speaking about this whole, how all this stuff correlates, right? So I was all very much out of balance. And then she kind of came in, and it was a bit of chaos, because when I hadn't been in a relationship for a long time, and a lot of things kind of came up for me, like, oh, Jesus, am I going to get abandoned or whatever? And I think maybe some things came up for her too, right? I'm sure, right? Because this is what kind of happens. But there was chaos there, but through that chaos, we found the order. And what happened thereafter, you know, she gave me this kind of grounding, because I was always sort of like, all right, and what's the new big thing? Go and live in Brazil. I was living in Brazil a couple of years back. Now I'm here for kind of holiday for a couple of months. Go over to Hong Kong or Thailand or Australia and, you know, work out this thing, or do this movement camp, or do this kind of thing. What's the next thing? I'm just looking for the next thing constant, right? Whereas Tara kind of gave me this base solid grounding, right? You could say security, right? But more like love, which kind of gave me the necessary kind of ingredients or nest I needed to be able to build something out of it. And I'm not sure I could have done it without her, man. Like, she's amazing, and she's always there for me. Like, everything that happens in the business, she's like the first person I consult. And she's not like she doesn't want to share on social, and she's not outwardly expressive like that online or anything. But often, like, I have a lot of mentors and stuff, and often some of the questions I ask Tara, I get this sort of intuitive feminine response, and it's so much more genius than everything I'm getting from elsewhere, because she just kind of knows me and she feels into where I'm at, and she just kind of gets this intuitive response. So, you know, to the questions I was asking Elliot Holtz, to some of the things I maybe spoke about today, I'm like, hey babe, what do you think about this? And she just goes, what about this? And I'm like, yes, that is it. That is exactly what I should do. And the other cool thing is, man, she also kind of works with me. She helps me as well, you know, so she does some of the admin admin, does some of the finance stuff, and does a little bit of the creative stuff, video editing. And that's been really beautiful because we're both here now in Brazil, and now she can pay for her whole trip and make an income while we're here as well, which is really an amazing thing. So it's all good, man. It's great. Like, I recommend relationships if you find the right one.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. And really, really insightful, at least for myself, hopefully for other people as well. Cool. I think to sort of start to wrap it up a bit, the one question I like to ask is, when you leave this world, how would you like your success to be measured? Does that make sense?
Yeah, man, immediately, as soon as you were saying that, something was hitting me here in my chest. But then the last question, how do I want my success to be measured? I'm not sure if I care about that. There is something that I would like to leave the world with, and it's just, I just like to help. I think there's a lot of good people out there that are doing cool things. But for me, one thing, it's something we spoke about a little bit before the call. Like, one thing, like, I wasn't always the most confident guy, man. Like, I didn't come from a wealthy background. I grew up in this just kind of scarce-minded structures in my life. And there was no, like, it's like when you're about to leave school, it's like, what are you going to do? What subject are you going to study? Business isn't on the cards, right? It's not one of the things that you can choose, or it doesn't exist as far as I'm concerned, right? It's totally a path less traveled. So I think there's many, many ways in life to create abundance, right? And I think, so that's one piece, right? It's like helping delete scarcity in humans, right? Helping overcome that, or helping shift the culture around money and finance and possibilities and entrepreneurship, right? Have that be much more commonplace in the culture, literally from the ground up for kids. I think that would be really cool. Another thing that I think would be really cool. So I said I wasn't always the most confident guy. So I used to be nervous, right? If I was to walk up to a group of people or say hi, or was in the bar and I was to go up and say hello to a girl or something like that, right? I'd be nervous. And I don't think those nerves, I think that's a rational fear. And I think it comes from people being, in a bit of a cage within themselves, right? They're a bit fearful. And what I love about Elliot Holtz and the journey that I've gone over the last couple of years, a lot of personal development stuff, is I love seeing people unleash the shackles and just jump out at you and just be like, hey world, what the fuck's up? I'm alive. This is me. Check me out, right? That's what excites me. Expression. And I think in the culture that we have today, it's not so fueled, especially for men a little bit more so these days, right? I'm not saying that's across, it's when men and women, but I'm passionate about working with men, right? And I see them caged up a lot of time. I lived in Sweden for 6 months, right? Nice guys there, but they're not expressive for the most part. They're all kind of wearing gray suits, perfect hair, and they all have like bags under their eyes, and they look a little bit shy, and they're kind of in themselves, and they're not really flowy with conversations. I'm not saying that, I'm sure there's some of the most charismatic Swedish guys in the world are probably from there, but I was like a bit like, wow, men are in a cage here. So like, why? Because I don't know, the culture is not really encouraging true expression. There's a lot of PC culture. There's a lot of things that are out there that make men feel a bit like, oh, can I say that? Can I do that? Can I be me? Can I be me unapologetically? And can I just go up and say, hey, you're gorgeous, right? Or something like that, right? Why can't I do that? What's wrong with doing that? I'm going to tell a beautiful woman she's gorgeous, because she is gorgeous. And I think she's amazing. So I want to go and tell her that. Go and tell her that. I want to change this. I want culture in a way to encourage that expression of people, dropping this judgment and stuff that's in the culture a little bit. But if I can contribute in any kind of way, shape, or form to those two things, deleting scarcity, increasing expression of humans, I feel like I'd be very, very fulfilled. They're two things that light me up, man.
I love it. And I think really, really interesting. And I think that's the thing for me, is it's almost, when I say success, it's like, well, what is success to people? And that is clearly like, that's your success to me. At least that's how I interpreted it. And yeah, two massive things. And yeah, if you want a guinea pig, well, I'm over here. I could use a bit of help on the whole sort of expression front, but yeah, something I'm definitely working on. So yeah, look, I really appreciate that. And yeah, I think it's been really, really insightful, at least for me. Hopefully other people find that as well. And I just wanted to ask you, like, is there anything else you wanted to add to finish up? And if not, where can people find you?
Awesome, man. No, I feel pretty fulfilled, man. And I just want to say thanks so much for having us on today. And, Luke, I consider you a warrior too, man. Like, you're walking a path, man. And you're, like you're saying there, maybe there's things that you're about to step into or embark on this new kind of journey, this new chapter of growth. And I just want to commend you for that, man, because it's like you've done it the opposite way from me. You've gone the entrepreneurship first and then the personal development side second. I've kind of gone the personal development side first and then the entrepreneurship side second. I think both work. It's both the path of growth. It's both the path less traveled, but it's the most rewarding and fulfilling one at the end of the day. So, man, I just want to commend you for that. Yeah, nothing else really. Like, if people want to check me out, man, I guess I've got a little ebook, costs like a buck, tons of value, comes with a couple of little secret bonuses in there. If somebody wants to drop $1 and check out my funnel, the funnel's kind of cool as well, just to kind of go through a bit of an experience. So you can get that at modernwarrior.pro/thebook. Otherwise, you can find some free stuff as well. Go to my website, chrisfinlay.com, CHRIS-Finlay, chris-finlay.com. Yeah, man, on Instagram, Facebook, I'm not much of a big social media guy or anything, but I'm sure people can find the odd thing on there on one of those platforms. I'm only a Google search away. And yeah, man, thanks for having us on, Luke. It was a pleasure, man.
No, awesome. Really, really appreciate that. And yeah, I'll chat to you soon.